The Left-Handed Elves, a name that almost none have heard for thousands of years, and those that remember it reel in scorn at its utterance. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Camel, but more importantly, welcome back to the Elder Scrolls Lore series, a series in which we have a more in-depth look at the intricacies of the Elder Scrolls to help us better understand the universe that we so love. Today we will be focusing our gaze upon the Left-Handed Elves and answer the question of who are they exactly. Links to my other Elder Scrolls lore videos can be found down in the description, along with links for my social media. Give them a click after this video. So, the Left-Handed Elves. They were also known as the Sinistral Elves, Left-Handed Mer, or Sinistral Mer. They were a race of elves who lived on the continent of Yokuda. If you are unfamiliar with it, Yokuda is, or was, an ancient continent found to the west of Tamriel, thought to now be destroyed. Yokuda was the homeland of the Red Guards, who, back then, were known as Yokudans. It is implied that the Left-Handed Elves were entirely destroyed by the ancient Yokudans in a war between the two races. If any Sinistral Elves did survive the war, they likely died with the sinking of their continent. There have been no recorded cases of anyone reaching or returning from Yokuda since its sinking over 3,658 years ago. So, for all intents and purposes, the Left-Handed Elves are now an extinct race. And while these mysterious elves did achieve great things, the ancient Yokudans did a swell job in erasing them from history. So who exactly were they, and where did they come from? Well, finding the Left-Handed Elves' roots in Tamriel's history is a little bit complex. All of the elven races on Nirn can be traced back to the Aldmer, except of course, the Left-Handed Elves. But if not from the original ancient race of Aldmer, then where did they come from? Well, in classic Elder Scrolls fashion, rather than going back to the beginning of time, we'll need to go back to the end of time. You see, the Elder Scrolls is a cycle. Auriel, the birth of time, Akatosh, the body of time, and Alduin, the end of time. Once the cycle is complete, time ends and starts anew. These are called Kalpa cycles, the birth and death of timelines. We, the players, have only experienced one of the timelines, the one in which the Elder Scrolls games are set in. Well, the Yokudans and the Sinistral Elves are native to the previous Kalpa cycle. Just before it ended, the two races moved sideways, stepping in a parallel fashion across realities, from their dying timeline to a new, fresh timeline, our timeline, the reality we know as the Elder Scrolls. So both the Sinistral Elves and the Yokudans, and therefore the Red Guards, are quite literally not of this world. They brought with them knowledge that can still be found on Tamriel today. For example, turbans and scimitars are both inventions of the Left-Handed Elves, technologies from a previous timeline still found in present-day Nirn. Other great feats were not unfamiliar ground for the Left-Handed Elves, as they are thought to have created the Orcical Tower of Yokuda, which was one of the great towers of Nirn. The Sinistral Elves had at one point formed an empire that stretched across the entire continent of Yokuda. This empire was said to be 4 times larger than the Septim Empire. So these were no band of desert barbarian elves. Given the Septim Empire was the longest lasting empire of Tamriel, and at its height, it ruled over the entire 9 provinces. Essentially, the size of its empire was the entire size of Tamriel's population. So for the Left-Handed Elves to have had an empire 4 times larger, well, that is notably impressive. The Sinistral Elves were ultimately accustomed to desert living, using magics and techniques not known to this world. Their wizards could create cities out of the sand in minutes. They could tunnel underground through the sand dunes at exceptional rates during sandstorms. Their sandsmiths and stonemancers could create armor and weapons from sandstone and sand. These ancient arts of the arcane have been lost with Yokuda, but much of what the left-handed elves did was adopted by the Yokudans and subsequently passed down to modern-day Redguards. So much of what we know as Redguard culture is actually left-handed elf culture. So while, again, for all intents and purposes, the left-handed elves are extinct, in a sense they do live on with modern-day Redguards. So whatever happened to this dominant desert-dwelling powerhouse, the left-handed elves, the Sinistral Elves? Well, having two big dominant cultures stuffed onto a relatively small continent has never led to peace. For thousands of years, the Sinistral Elves were bitter enemies with the ancient Redguards, the Yokudans. During the Merethic era, the Natotambu warred to a standstill to decide who would lead the charge against the left-handed elves. The Yokudan deity Leki intervened and a leader was decided. And once this leader was chosen, a war was declared on the Sinistral Elves. Diagna, an avatar of the deity Hunding, brought orichalcum weapons to the Yokudans, which were instrumental in defeating the left-handed elves on the battlefields. And while they did war for many hundreds of years, during the 792nd year of the First Era, the Ragada used a forbidden technique called the Pankarato Sword. This destroyed the entire continent of Yokuda, and with it, the left-handed elves. And since then, none of these Sinistral Mer have been seen of or recorded of since. Why the Yokudans had such hatred for the left-handed elves is unknown, and modern-day Redguards no longer speak of them, as to recall their abominations only serves to darken their days. Regardless of reason, the Yokudans brought their seething hatred for elves to Tamriel, as when they landed on the shores of Hammerfell, they made quick work of wiping out the local alien settlements. And that is all we know about the Sinistral Elves, the left-handed elves. Well, that's all we know as confirmed lore. So what we'll touch on now is not lore, but more theories. So don't take any of these ideas as fact because they are not. They will of course have educated reasonings behind them, but they are not confirmed as lore. No one actually knows what the Sinistral Elves look like, as there are quite simply no recordings of their physical appearance. But, as the Redguards have dark skin, and the Yokudans and the left-handed elves came from the same Kalpa cycle, in all depictions of the left-handed elves, they have jet black skin and bright red hair. Again, pure conjecture, but a common stylization when representing the Sinistral Elves in physical form. Another mystery is the basis of their name. It is thought that the Yokudans and the left-handed elves worked in a yin and yang fashion, and oftentimes the opposite path to what is right is referred to as the left-handed path. And because the history was written by the Yokudans, of course, their viewpoint is the right one, rendering the Sinistral Elves having the left-handed path, the wrong one, resulting in their name, the left-handed elves, the wrong elves in a sense. As far as the word Sinistral goes, who knows? And because the Sinistral Elves are not descendants of the Aldmer, their name did not come from the Aldmeris tongue, so we are completely unable to translate it from Old Aldmeris. And probably the most long-shot theory, the Yokudans had a burning hatred for Lorkhan. This is fact, but they had no reason to hate Lorkhan. This makes us think that perhaps the left-handed elves had a connection to Lorkhan, and therefore led to the Yokudans hating Lorkhan because he was connected to the left-handed elves, their enemies. If this is true, then this would render the left-handed elves as the first true Lorcanic Mer race. It has also been rumored that the modern-day Mayama, or the Sea Elves, are actually the descendants of the left-handed elves, but that's as far as I want to go with conjecture and theories, as we're just getting into headcanon territory. But there is one other thing I would like to touch on, and we'll have to pause with the stylizations because it requires a great level of detail. So the sinking of Yokuda took place in the year 792 of the First Era. And The Elder Scrolls Online is set around the 583rd year of the Second Era. So, The Elder Scrolls Online is set over 2,700 years after Yokuda was sunken into the ocean as a result of the Ra-Garda's Pankratos sword ritual. Well, if one goes into The Elder Scrolls Online and stands on the western shores of Glenumbra in High Rock, the closest position on Tamriel to Yokuda, or where at least it used to be, well, if you look out across the ocean to the west, what do you know? A giant landmass off in the distance, exactly where Yokuda should be geographically? Now, adding in a giant continent is not something developers do by accident. So is Yokuda still there? Well, I mean, look, use your eyes, it is there. Remember, at the time we are seeing this in The Elder Scrolls Online, Yokuda has been sunken for 2,711 years. So if we're seeing Yokuda right now, which I'm 99.9% sure we are, then the Sinistral Elves could still be there, right? The left-handed elves could still be living on Yokuda. I find it unlikely, as no one has been to Yokuda since, or has reported seeing a left-handed elf anywhere on Tamriel, but definitely worth pointing out that Yokuda is still there, above the ocean as a visible continent. So I do hope that you have enjoyed the time-jumping left-handed or Sinistral Elves. Equally so, I do hope that you have learnt something new about the beautifully mad universe that these wonderful games take place in, The Elder Scrolls. But most importantly of all, what do you think about these elves? Do you think we'll ever see them again? Will we ever get the opportunity to sail to the quite visible continent of Yokuda and find out for ourselves? Were the left-handed elves magical time-shifting entities, stonemances to be idolized by sorcerers, or were the Yokudans right in destroying them? If so, for what reason? Be sure to let me know your thoughts on the left-handed elves and what you would like me to cover in the Elder Scrolls lore series. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a kindness and leave a like, share it with all of your friends, leave a comment with your Elder Scrolls lore video ideas and your thoughts on the Sinistral Elves. And of course, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos similar to this one, please subscribe. It helps me know that people enjoy these kind of videos and in the long run will result in more content similar to this video. If you would like to support the channel in a more personal way, you can become a patron on Patreon. As I'm sure you know, all of my time and energy goes into making these videos that I create for you to enjoy, so your support is most appreciated and welcomed in any and all forms. Feel free to check out the playlist on screen. Thanks for watching, thank you for supporting the channel, and I'll see you very shortly in the next video. I'll see you there soon.